All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this press conference following the already last Ecofin meeting under the Belgian presidency. With us on the stage, for the Belgian presidency, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Vincent van Petegem, and for the European Commission, the Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis. They will both give you a quick readout overview of today's meeting, and then we will take your question. We'll start with you, Minister, please.
Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Alexander, for the introduction. Pleased to address you today after this last Ecofin meeting under the Belgian presidency. And I had the pleasure to chair the Ecofin councils over the past 6 months, and together we managed to make good progress towards a more resilient European Union by closing some major files. Together we made our unwavering support to Ukraine a concrete reality. Together we continued implementing the RRF, fostering much needed investments and reforms. Together we made great progress when it comes to our tax system, despite the challenge of unanimity rules. Together we also pushed forward concrete steps to complete the Capital Markets Union and the Banking Union. And of course, last but not least, together we also reformed our budgetary rules, making them fit to reality, striking the right balance between room for investments and reforms and budgetary discipline. That's for the broader perspective, but of course we had also today a very interesting last meeting under our presidency. But first of all, we started the day with the annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the European Investment Bank that I also had the privilege to share. At the informal Ecofin in Ghent in February, we actually launched a process that led to the formal endorsement today of the new EIB strategic roadmap, laying out 8 key priorities for the EIB. The adoption of this strategic roadmap follows several months of intensive engagement between President Calvino and the EU governments, including dedicated discussions during the Ecofin meetings in February, but also in April. Moreover, as governors, we have set in motion that process to adapt the statutes of the EIB. In line with other international financial institutions, this reform would give the Board of Governors the competence to determine the gearing ratio. The legislative procedure for this statutory change will now be taken forward by the EIB, governing bodies and the Council, in consultation, of course, with the European Parliament, European Commission, and some national parliaments. Moreover, following the statutory changes, governors have agreed to raise the gearing ratio from 250%, or the gearing ratio limit from 250% to 290%. This will enable the EIB to maintain the current annual lending levels and implement also in additional mandates and guarantees from the European budget. This will also provide sufficient headroom to implement the strategic roadmap and for critical investment in areas such as clean energy, batteries, social and territorial cohesion, and security and defense. And now with respect to the Ecofin meeting today, we started with an important recurring item, that is the economic and financial impact of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Just as last month, we had the honor to welcome the Ukrainian finance minister, Marchenko, by video conference. It was again a very useful exchange of views, hearing from those directly affected by the challenges of war. We reassured Minister Marchenko of our unwavering commitment and our continued support. Afterwards, among member states, we had an internal discussion on how to implement the agreement of the G7 leaders to provide an additional $50 billion support to Ukraine. This money could be could be made front-loaded to Ukraine already by the end of this year. And the loan would be repaid by using the future windfall profits generated from the immobilized Russian assets. We also had a fruitful first discussion on that and how the European Union will start to work on this important task. Now our technical teams will further outline more concrete details, and this discussion will of course also take place and continue under the Hungarian presidency. Afterwards, the package on the VAT in the digital age, VIDA, was again on the agenda. As presidency, we did our job as an honest broker, trying to find a compromise amongst all member states. The compromise text we negotiated finally got support from the Commission and also all member states but one, Estonia, as we also already noted in May. Since then, we have had a considerable numbers of consultations with different delegations to test options to accommodate the Estonian demands. But at the same time, we noted that many member states were of the opinion that a lot has been already done to accommodate Estonians' concerns, and that any further move in their direction would unbalance the very delicate compromise. And it's therefore unfortunate that despite the considerable efforts that have been made by the presidency, Estonia is still not ready for or to find a compromise. Of course, the file itself remains a very important package of measures. We therefore wish our Hungarian colleagues all the best. At the same time, I also would like to thank everybody who participated and put and invested efforts in bringing the file forward. So thanks to my team and all other teams for doing so. All in all, I'm of course satisfied that our presidency has been very effective in terms of taxation matters, with a deal on the Foster Directive, a common position on the UN Framework Convention on Tax Cooperation, and of course also plenty of other accomplishments. The progress on all taxation files during the last 6 months are detailed in the Ecofin report to the European Council, which was also approved today. Moreover, I also would like to take the opportunity to welcome further agreements that we were able to reach in the last period on important files, and I always like to mention two of them. First of all, the retail investment strategy in the context of the CMU, and also the CMDI package in the context of the banking union. The third main topic of the day was the European semester. Commission presented the main elements of the spring package that was adopted on Wednesday. Presentation focused mainly on the country-specific recommendations that will provide guidance to the member states on their socioeconomic policies and reforms. Now the technical work can start, and the Council will return to this matter as at its next meeting in July. But that's also, of course, under the Hungarian presidency. But Valdis will certainly tell you more in a moment. And then maybe to conclude, we also had a quick exchange on the economic recovery in Europe. Implementation of the RRF is ongoing. So far, more than 240 billion euros have been disbursed. We have achieved already more than 1,300 milestones and targets. We expect disbursements to reach 300 billion euros by the end of the year. And we, of course, committed to use all the funds available by the legal deadline of August 2026. Today, we also approved the modified plan submitted by Ireland, which is an important step to support the green transition of the country. And I think that covers all the points that I would like to make with respect to the meetings that we had.
Yes, thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank Vincent and the entire Belgian presidency team for your work. You have been a very efficient presidency indeed and brought many things forward, despite this being an election period. and also I would like to thank for a good cooperation between Presidency and the Commission. So on today's Ecofin agenda, I will start with economy, which held up remarkably well in face of the challenges in the past few years. We expect a modest growth rate in 2024, picking up further in 2025. Labor markets are holding up well and employment is high. Still, there are many structural challenges to tackle, mostly with a negative, related with a negative impact on EU's competitiveness. This is a main focus of European semester spring package that the Commission presented to ministers today. It also highlights the need to strengthen the sustainability of public finances while preserving public investment and growth through reforms. All this requires a process of fiscal consolidation to be steered by the EU's new fiscal rules, now fully embedded in the semester's recommendations. The European semester also examines progress that countries have made out in carrying out reforms and investments in their recovery and resilience plans. This will give a substantial push to tackling structural challenges which I mentioned. For those countries facing implementation delays, we provide tailored recommendations on how to speed up. A quick update on the Recovery and Resilience Facility itself. Total disbursements to date amount to more than 240.3 billion euros. There are 13 payment requests ongoing, and we expect to process about 30 more requests during the rest of this year. This would bring total RRF disbursements for 2024 between 80 and 100 billion euros, and will arrive at a grand total of more than 300 billion euros disbursed since the RRF was launched. And I also would like to take this opportunity to welcome today's endorsement of Ireland's revised RRP. Given the RRF's 2026 cutoff date, we need to address bottlenecks urgently because the clock is ticking, and the Commission's updated RRF guidance will help Member States to do this and speed up implementation of their plans. For example, a new guidance will provide more flexibility for amending RRPs, reduce the frequency of revisions of operational arrangements, clarify ways to combine RRF funding and other EU funds. On taxation, as the Minister said, despite great efforts made by Belgian presidency, there was no agreement on Commission's proposal to bring EU's VAT rules into line with a digital age. And this is disappointing for our fair taxation agenda. We need to remedy current situation where the platform economy is not taxed fairly and appropriately, leading to distortions of competition between the traditional and platform economies. But our work will continue on this. Lastly, on Ukraine, much has happened since last Ecofin met. This week, EU ambassadors agreed on a 14th package of sanctions against Russia. Sanctions will further deny Russia access to key technologies, strip it of more energy revenues, and tackle its shadow fleet and overseas shadow banking network. And next week, as Ecofin Council confirmed today, the EU will start accession talks with both Ukraine and Moldova. On financing, in May, Member States agreed to use revenues from Russian frozen assets or from proceeds from Russian frozen assets to benefit Ukraine. We estimate that our measures would make up to 3 billion euros available this year, and we expect to make a first payment of 1.5 billion euros before summer break. Our immediate focus will be on using those revenues for Ukraine's military support. We are working at full speed so that the first procurement can be made soon. I also warmly welcome the outline deal struck last week in G7 to provide some $50 billion of loans for Ukraine using revenues from frozen Russian sovereign assets. As you know, most of those assets are blocked in the EU, more than 200 billion euros. The G7 statement envisages making additional loans available for Ukraine by the end of the year. The G7 will now operationalize these commitments to use future flows of extraordinary revenues to service and repay loans. And also at the EU level, we are discussing future steps, including the size and modalities of the EU loan. The EU will thus be working to mobilize more financing for Ukraine using extraordinary revenues from frozen Russian assets. So instead, EU taxpayers paying for the damage that Russia has caused, it will be Russia itself. On the Ukraine facility, Ukraine should receive 1.9 billion euros in pre-financing next week, and the next two regular payments could take place later in autumn. Last week at the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin, I participated in signing the first guarantee agreements with international financial institutions and EU member states development banks. These are worth 1.4 billion euros. And just after this press conference, together with a European Investment Fund, we will launch a pilot facility under InvestEU to allow export credit agencies to support SMEs in trading with Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, EVP. Thank you, Minister. We'll now open the floor for some questions. We'll start with you, Jorge, please.
Jorge, good afternoon. Jorge Valero with Bloomberg. It's a question both for the Minister and Vice President on Ukraine financing and the use of the proceeds. If you could tell us, Vice President, how the discussion went on issues like, the size of the EU loan, as you mentioned, and also whether there is convergence among the member states on using the proceeds derived from Euroclear to pay all the loans that repay all the loans that the G7 countries will provide. And for the minister, one of the issues to address is the guarantees. And in case that the sanctions are blocked, let's say by a country, for example, Hungary, will it be okay for Belgium? It's an option for Belgium use national legislation to circumvent this veto and could still use the proceeds. Thank you.
We are currently working on exact modalities on how we can make this loan happen. So from the EU side, we are willing to provide a substantial size of this $50 billion agreed at the G7 level. On exact size of the potential EU loan, we cannot tell at this stage because it will also depend on other G7 partners' willingness to contribute. And we're also looking certainly also on how to ensure proper risk sharing between EU and other G7 partners, given the fact that indeed bulk of those assets are in the European Union. So it's currently in work in progress. We started the discussions on those modalities, and I would say these discussions were very constructive, and there was a very broad agreement that we need to be moving towards this and actually making sure that this loan can be available for Ukraine already this year.
Yeah. Well, first of all, for our country, of course, there were two elements that were important. First of all, that we did not touch the assets themselves, as the ownership title would change, which would give consequences both on the legal side, financial side that are unknown. And second, of course, the risk sharing is I think important in the rollout of the instrument. and is a crucial element in the whole discussion. As the commissioner said, and I also have that impression during the discussion that we had, was that there was convergence in the discussion. The specific topic or situation that you mentioned is currently not the case. We will now work together with our deputies on the technicalities, and then we'll of course see how we can proceed. We also gave a mandate to the deputies to come up with some proposals and specific proposal by the next Ecofin beginning of July or mid-July.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, in the back, please.
On the banking union.
Bancaria, y se debió a discrepancias de fondo sobre cómo avanzar entre los Estados miembros, y los Estados miembros, por tanto, se pusieron de acuerdo en pedir a la Comisión Europea que presentara una propuesta. La hicimos, tuvo una buena recepción por parte de la comunidad de supervisión, incluyendo el Banco Central Europeo, la EBA, etcétera. No obstante, las diferencias de fondo entre los Estados miembros no desaparecieron y, bueno, vuelven a resurgir en estos debates, y en una serie de ocasiones se llegó a un consenso sobre el mínimo común denominador. Así que la ambición inicial de la Comisión pues se ha diluido bastante, y es eso lo que ha señalado la Comisión. Bueno, como presidente, nuestra tarea es avanzar con los expedientes, progresar, sobre todo en los importantes, en el contexto de la Unión Bancaria, de Mercados de Capitales, y es lo que hemos hecho. Encontrar una síntesis entre las posiciones de los Estados miembros, y esa posición común de los 27 Estados miembros es un reflejo de las realidades políticas. Y bueno, pues en eso consiste la solución, el paquete que he presentado. ¿Alguna pregunta más?
No, nadie más. En línea tampoco, nadie. Bueno, pues creo que vamos a concluir aquí. Muchas gracias y que disfruten de un fin de semana estupendo. Nos vemos la semana que viene en esta sala. Esa es la última semana de la presidencia belga. Muchas gracias.